Now then, welcome back. We're talking GAA. We have Aaron Kernan on the line. Evening, sir.
How are we keeping, Joe?
Very well. And Kieran Donaghy, you're there?
Hi, Joe. Hi, Aaron.
Kieran, how are we?
Kieran, the last time I saw you, you were hanging out at around the kind of 6th green in Lahinch waiting for Shane Lowry to make his way up the fairway. That was a couple of weeks ago. The boys done good.
It's unbelievable, yeah. It's I don't know, it's remarkable really, like, you know, my mother's talking about it, you know, that kind of way, like she wouldn't know a golf club, she wouldn't know too much about golf, but like, you know, she was watching ASD and at home minding our two girls while we were in Dublin. Myself and Gooch were looking out of a corporate box out on the game and looking at the TV to our left to see how Mr. Lowry was getting on. So it was like a game of tennis for us at times. But yeah, no, look, delighted obviously for him. It's huge for his career. It's huge for his legacy. And I think he can really start to enjoy his golf now and express himself. All that pressure's off. He's exempt for 10 years on the European Tour, 5 on the US Tour, all the majors. You know, he's at a good age of his life. His game is good, and with that bit of pressure off now, he can just go out and enjoy it a bit more. There should be more good things to come because he's some golfer, really, isn't he?
Well, isn't that the point? And it's something I'm guilty of as well, because he's so accessible, he's so down to earth, he wears his talent so lightly, you can forget just how brilliant he is. Yeah,
like around the greens. Saw him for a few holes in the Hinch. I was out in Abu Dhabi earlier on this year. I followed him around for 8 holes as well. Around the greens, he's magic, really. And that's a huge part of golf when you have those soft hands and you can get up and down. And yeah, look, once he made the putt in the first yesterday, I said to the wife that this fella's got the steal. He's going to go on and do it after that putt, because that was what looked like a double bogey all day to walk off there with a 5, and for Tommy Fleetwood to miss the putt. You know, I just thought it was a big moment that early in the round, and he really played some great golf in pretty horrendous conditions at times. But he did that when he won the Irish Open as well. He's solid around links, and yeah, no, absolutely unbelievable. Chuffed for him and his family and his wife and his kid and his mum and his dad. It's a super story.
Sure is. Let's turn to the football then. So on Saturday we had Cork losing out in the end to Tyrone 215 to 212. The Dubs did what they do against Roscommon, 226 to 14 points. And then on Sunday, after a tight enough game for a large enough spell, Andy Moran made a big difference for Mayo, 217 to 14 points against Meath. And then the game of the weekend, if not the summer, Donegal 120, Kerry 120. So Dublin and Tyrone are through. They'll play for top spot in Omagh in 2 weeks' time. Donegal and Kerry both level on 3 points. Kerry ahead in points difference. Mayo are on 2 points. Kerry will go to Navan. And as we know, Donegal will go to Mayo, where the winner progresses. So that pool, or that group, is nicely set up. I guess we've got to start with Kerry Donegal, Aaron. As I said, game of the weekend by distance, possibly the summer, level 16 times. This was more open than I was expecting, I must say.
Yeah, it was. It was a superb game, and I suppose it was a good time to harp back in it. But the house I was sitting in kept flicking back and forward to the golf, so it shows you the extent we had the game of the summer, with 2 heavyweights looking to close the gap on the Dubs, and yet it still wasn't enough for to keep my father from flicking back and forward to watch how Shane Lowry was getting on. But yeah, I even sat down again to watch it on Sunday game last night, particularly the last 20 minutes. You know, we were sitting at a 2-year-old birthday party, and we were all on the edge of our seat. Like, I could even feel my heart rate starting to race. You know, I was getting absorbed in the game as well, you know, and that's just completely neutral. And really, that's all we want to see. That is what the Super 8s were brought in for, to see the best teams playing against each other. And I have to say, like, obviously the weather got worse in the second half, but I just thought the point taken late on, whenever the pressure was really on, I thought it was absolutely superb and cripping stuff. And even from a neutral, but I probably felt that a draw was a fair enough result. And Kerry will be delighted with it, because Meath will give them their fill of it for a certain distance, but ultimately they're having a huge pile to play for, so definitely advantage to them. But I think Donegal even did a lot of boys who would have gained good championship experience in Croke Park yesterday. They'll be well set up now for another brilliant clash in Castlebar next week. So this is suppose whenever they did, the Super 8s were muted. It was games like that there and setting it all up for the final day that I suppose Croke Park would have envisaged, and definitely both teams delivered yesterday. I thought it was absolutely top class. The players, in fairness, they were out on their feet. I think it was Adrian Spillane went to tackle Michael Murphy at the end, and you could nearly just see his facial expressions was like, I have nothing left, I can't tackle you. He couldn't get turned, and it was Murphy who delivered the ball inside the 45 for the last free for Donegal, which he then kicked himself. But brilliant contest, absolutely top class. And
Aaron, Dublin are almost the elephant in the room for all of these games. They're like a shadow there, where you're judging almost every moment or passage of play in the context of how will these teams get on against Dublin. Was it of a high quality for you? I mean, you mentioned the shot taking, and it seems like we're seeing more and more players who can kick off either foot, which is a great thing in the game. There's some really brilliant forwards in the game now from both sides, even just yesterday. But did you look at it and think this is of a really good quality, and it wasn't just about excitement?
Oh no, I did, absolutely. I thought everything about it, everything that is good, and I suppose the biggest thing about it was the amount of duels that there was in it. Because very often now you go through a whole game and you can say like who won that personal battle, and it doesn't really happen because you don't see the one-to-one contest. Like there was key matchups yesterday that boys were sent out to do jobs, and straight away some of them didn't work. Switches had to be made. Then there was injuries, black cards. It left that there was so much intrigue in it. But I thought that the players themselves still delivered, even regardless of how the conditions deteriorated. I thought the players delivered in all aspects, in one-on-one defending, in just sheer desire, and then in terms of your foot pass and your ball-winning ability inside, particularly, and making it stick under intense pressure. I thought was very good. And then obviously it was capped off by the ability to execute scores whenever it was needed. Like that's probably the big thing that is always thrown at teams whenever you're talking about, can you make this next step up to the next level, and can you kick enough scores whenever the pressure really comes on. Like in fairness, for the two teams to score 120 apiece yesterday is very, very rare. You see that there in a game of Gaelic football, and I think that stat alone, the fact that they're able to do that there, just proves the quality that both teams possess.
Kieran, we spoke this time last week after Kerry had beaten Mayo so comprehensively in Killarney, and you sounded just a note of caution that everything had gone Kerry's way and that the Donegal game in Croke Park would be a real litmus test for where they were. How did they come through it? How did they look to you?
I think they came through it well when you consider, and this goes for both teams. I think both teams will be happy enough with it on the basis that Donegal were missing Neil McGee, Paddy McGrath, obviously Owen Bond is out for the season, and they lost their two midfielders. Kerry were without David Moore and James O'Donoghue, and they lost a few fellas as the game was going on as well. So I think both teams will be happy that their squads were tested. Kerry introduced a lot of bodies that mightn't have played too many minutes before the season. So there'll be a good kind of buzz coming away from the game from both sides to be able to get a draw, missing so many key players. And it was a test, and Kerry were tested, and in fairness, they came up with the answers, and obviously when you're under your own crowd, you always feel they were probably a bit unlucky in the end, but a draw was not a bad result for Kerry yesterday, and leaves it in their own hands going to Navan, which is what Peter Keane would have wanted at the start of the year.
I'm in a pattern at the moment, Kieran, where every time I see Michael Murphy, I think, well, there's the footballer of the year, and then I watch Jack McCaffrey and I think, well, there's the footballer of the year. I'm not sure you split those two.
Yeah, no, you can't split too much. Michael Murphy is Michael Murphy, Kerry, in fairness, went man-to-man on the two of them fellas yesterday, and, they were good battles, they were good tussles, and they're going to get his. Michael Murphy got 1-4 from play, I think, and 3 points, or 1-4 from frees, and then 3 points from play. I think he could have got a goal or two on one of them. I think Paul Murphy came over to them, it was one-on-one. He had speed built up. He's so strong when he's in that amount of pace, but I think the stage of the game it might have been level, and I think he was just thinking, let's put Donegal up a point here, whereas I think it was a chance maybe for him to put the head down, try and use his strength to go past Murphy and have a crack at goal. But no, he was immense all day yesterday, in fairness, and Ryan McHugh was brilliant as well, who was, and Aaron talked about it, Jules, all over the pitch, you'd McMenamin and Clifford down on one end, you'd Paddy McBrearty and Tyg Morley, and then you had obviously them ones up the other end of the pitch, and I just looking in at stages, both teams look quite open. Both teams left a 3-on-3 at the back at stages, and as you said, rightly so, when you're looking at all these games, you're kind of looking at Dublin, and I was just looking in going, if that's Mannion, Con Callaghan and Kieran Kilkenny, with that amount of space around them, could cause problems. But look, Kerry will just be happy that they're one game away from winning the group, and that's what and it won't be easy above Navan, because Meath have been really unlucky in the last 2 games. They've played well. They have kind of left a bit there. Both games afterwards, they'd look back and say, if we'd have done this, if we'd have done that, we would have been in the game. And they were kind of blown out by 9 points in both, which is very harsh on them. And I think they'll want for themselves to go to Navan and show a real bit of edge and see if they can knock off Kerry and have a real feel-good factor going into next year. So it's a real dangerous game for Kerry, because all the focus will be on Donegal and Mayo over in Castlebar. And I think it's important for the psyche for Kerry to go up there, play well, don't pay Meath full respect they deserve because they're here and they've pushed both Donegal and Mayo close, and go and try and play really well against them and have that confidence going into the semi-final. Is huge for Kerry going forward, and obviously to get the Dave Morans and the James O'Donoghu's back, because you're obviously going to need everybody on full kilt.
What about Donegal going to Castlebar then, Aaron? Andy Moran to the rescue a little bit for Mayo yesterday, and I'm sure there's games in their legs and they'll benefit more than most from a 2-week break. James Horan was saying we didn't get the return we wanted. We 12 either wide or short into the goalie's hands in the first half, and we won most of those from turnovers, so we did very well defensively to win it, but just didn't get the return. It was disappointing in that respect. Andy Moran came on, changed the game. Donegal looked good. That game in Castlebar is going to be huge. What way do you see that going?
Yeah, for me, I really couldn't put a call on it at this stage, because I probably would have said up until yesterday, Donegal, I'm just thinking, like, how bad's Neil McGee, how bad's Paddy McGrath? We know that's the end of Owen Bond, so to progress to the semi-final and the stage and the pressure there's at now, you probably need as many of your top men there. And in fairness, McGrath and McGee, they're so experienced and so assured and composed in the back line that they'll be huge losses now if they're not back in 2 weeks' time. It's very hard to replace the experience and big days like that there, which they will badly need. Now, in fairness, like Steve McManaman had an outstanding game yesterday, considering the pressure he was on in a one-on-one battle with acres of space with David Clifford and Croke Park. I don't think there's any more daunting task he can get, so that, he'll be even better for that. But I just think this game in a couple of weeks' time, you need as strong, as close to your full strength team as what you possibly can get. For me, probably the issue I see with Mayo is they just don't seem to be clicking. You could have seen sort of like, not really patterns of play, but they had more outlets on the half-forward line whenever they're really going well, and then it's another sort of dink ball to the inside lane where Killian O'Connor would have been winning at Andy Moore, and then you have the runners coming off the shoulder. We're not seeing as much of that there now. Granted, Lee Keegan's struggling for a bit of form, probably because of the ankle injury. Colin Boyle, granted, had a good game yesterday and pushed forward a wee bit more than what we've seen. And Paddy Durkin is missing for them. So they are huge losses in terms of that's where a lot of their scores came from. You would have guaranteed 5-6 points from play from their half-back line, which they don't have at the minute. And that is one key aspect, in my opinion, where I think it's breaking down, that we don't see the same fluency in them. Now, they have 2 weeks to regroup. They've had a really, really tough schedule in terms of the amount of games that they've had in a row there. But it's a game, again, that I think everyone in the country will want to see. It'll be absolutely packed to capacity, and there's a bit of rivalry between the two teams. Everything's at stake in it. So to have a knockout championship game of that magnitude in a provincial venue, I think it'll be top class.
Yeah, it'll be an amazing game. How much Mayo will regroup is almost the unknowable going into that game for lots of people. We'll touch on Cork in a moment, Kieran. Cork and Meath kind of vying for most improved in the class this summer, and they've both had good summers in many respects. Meath lost by 9 points again. Against Donegal, they're leading with about 15 minutes to go by a point, and they lose again, and the scoreboard doesn't look pretty. And even to a point, the Dublin game, if you didn't catch the game, you could really underestimate how decent they were in the first half, and they defended well, and the game was still somewhat of a contest at half-time, which is more than most against Dublin in their current form. So they are operating at this level, and they're a Division 1 team next year, but there's just some kind of bridge when it comes to making that count almost on the scoreboard more. There's obviously an art to that aspect of the game that maybe takes a bit of time when you're trying to get up with the big boys.
Yeah, I think it's been in there, Joe. That's a good point you're making. But I think you have to get in there with the big boys, and they'll learn an awful lot of harsh lessons this year. But that'll stand to them hugely next year. I guarantee you, if they're in positions, they'll talk about this week, before the next 2 weeks before the Kerry game. They'll talk about it in their off season. They'll talk about it when they get back together next year about how they're going to be better, how they're going to mind the ball. They obviously have to find a free taker of high quality to take them on to the next level again. But, they'll be really happy, as you said, of where they've come from this year, because, I was up at the Donegal game in Ballybuffet, and Meath for 56, 57 minutes, asked an awful lot of questions, and they had Paddy McGrath and Neil McGee on that day, so they'll be very happy. And Andy McEntee is kind of, he's added a bit of steel to them. And
it's not fitness, Kieran, is it?
No, I don't think it's fitness. It's just a bit of know-how late on in games, and it's a bit of, when you've been there before, you've got something to go to, where this is relatively unknown terms for a lot of these players. They wouldn't be used to playing against these teams at this level over the last few years. So it'll be huge for them going forward as a panel. And, that's the great thing that Andy will take away from this year, is that, we were in the trenches above in Ballybuffet. We were below against Mayo in front of 40,000 in Croke Park, and we're right there with them late on in the game. And, they'll look at the last 15 minutes of both games, and there'll be a pile of learning, a pile of, here's where we have to hold on to the ball. Here's where we have to drive on. Here's where we have to make sure we're more secure. Here's where if a team get a run of 2 or 3 points and somebody's got to go down, somebody's got to call for, there has to be some momentum killer for them built in. They're all stuff that they mightn't have just got yet in the locker, and I'm sure they'll have it next year. But they have a lovely young team there. The full back line, I love them. They're ballsy. They go man to man with you. They play you from the front. They're beating you out for ball. They're getting hands in. They're hardy. And yeah, look, Donald Keoghan's is a fantastic player, and Harmon at centre back is really good as well. So the 2 lads in the midfield, McEntee and Minton, have been good, and they'll find another few. The Lowry will be back in Meath football. Fellas will be driving a bit harder next year for training. They'll know Division 1 is there. They'll know the pressure that's going to bring in them. They know how ready they'll have to be for that, because every game in Division 1 is going to be a tough game for them. So that's hugely exciting for a Meath footballer. So look, no matter what happens to Meath next Sunday, whether they win, lose or draw, Andy won't have a job of trying to get them ready for next year. They're going to be a hungry team.
Okay. Let's talk Dublin then. A lot of brilliant things about this performance, as is the way. Aaron, are they better than they were last year?
For the rest of the country, unfortunately, I think they are. I hadn't seen them live since the league. The last game I seen them was the Tyrone game, where they were very much off colour. But I think it's clear to everyone that their full focus was on championship and 5 in a row. And I have to say, I thought they were absolutely incredible the other day. Roscommon, I think we all sort of forget, have already beaten Galway and Mayo this summer. And you put Galway and Mayo up against any of the top teams, whether that's Donegal, Kerry, Tyrone, what have you. You'd have a tight contest, but Dublin just went out the other day and absolutely stamped their authority all over it. Their aggression attacking the ball from their forward line, and also their aggression in getting it back. For me, 15 minutes into the game, it was literally it got to that stage where it was only going to be a matter of how much this was going to be. I have to say, just even the physical condition of them again, it just struck me the other day, the difference between them and the rest.
Can I jump in and ask you something about that? Because I was going to ask both of you this. This was a very interesting point. Anthony Cunningham was speaking afterwards, and he talked about various aspects of Dublin's brilliance. So he wasn't just saying the reason they're winning All Irelands is because physically they're different to other teams. So he was talking about their game management, their skill rate, their conversion rate, everything else. But he talked about their physicality. And bearing in mind, these are the Connacht champions, come through against Mayo and Galway. He said, physically, we'd be a few years off them. it doesn't come overnight, that kind of physicality. Now, bearing in mind, they lost by 18 points here. It was only 14 points last year. The question I wanted to get a sense from you both was, in your experience, he's talking there about a gap physically in the gym that might take 2-3 years to close on Dublin. Does that gap just remain, though? Like, do Dublin reach a point, Aaron, where they just can't improve that much anymore? Or in 2-3 years' time, will we still be saying something like, well, Roscommon have improved physically, but there's still a big gap with Dublin?
To be honest with you, I'm not clued in enough, to the actual science of it.
Fair enough.
I've always been sort of just done what I was told to do in terms of my strength and conditioning coaches and that there. So I can't imagine that there's a huge difference between what they're being told to do and what the rest are. But just physically, it's there for all to see. I think if you go back, I was working for yourselves and I was in the Upper Hogan, and the ball that Conor Callaghan won lands in one leg, but it was even just as the ball was floating to him, I could see him attacking it, and I could see him bracing his body to catch it, and it just struck me straight away. I was like, look at the size of this man. Like, even from where I was in the Upper Hogan, you could actually see nearly the veins bulging out of his arms. Like, it was like a beast going through the air to get it, hit the ground, shrugged this man off, took a bounce to compose himself, and tapped it over with the right foot.
I have to be honest, I must say, when he landed on his knee, I presume like half the country, I instantly held on to my own ligaments hoping for him, because I just thought I just thought this lad's in massive trouble.
Off the ground and had the composure to shrug his man off. He said, took a couple of steps to the right hand side and tapped it over the bar. So I don't know. Like,
well, Kieran might have an idea. I'll go to Kieran. I'll go to
better at eating better than what the rest are. I don't know how they're getting so many gains. But physically you can see it in them. They just look a different stature compared to anyone else they're coming up. And I'm even now. Granted, Kerry are definitely younger. But I suppose that Roscommon, when Kevin McStay said that exact same thing 12 months ago. Yeah. But the gap's got bigger.
Well, that's the thing. Kieran, do you have a sense? Mayo seem to have sort of got to that pitch, maybe one of the few teams who have. Will Dublin just keep people at arm's length physically, or do you just reach a point where you can't get much better?
I think they're. I think most inter-county teams are doing a lot of the same stuff, but they just have a lot of race horses, Joe. Yeah,
it helps.
Do you know what I mean? Honest to God, you can put me and you can go into the gym and do the exact same stuff Dublin are doing for the next 3 years and even more of it, but we still won't be able to run as fast as them or quick as them or as long as them. It's just, and they're so efficient with their energy. They know when the time to run is off the ball. They know when the time to drop in is a sweeper. They know when the time is to push up and tackle hard. Their press is saving them an awful lot of legs because they're in the press and they're not doing a rake of running around. When the ball goes out, you see Darragh Macaulay will come with a fist and try and fist it 40 yards back in towards goal. They're doing that because they're hoping they win that break and they've got the ball again, and it's a lot in their terms, and it's always easier to run when it's on your terms. And Dublin have played it on their terms for the last number of years, and they have momentum more often than not. They have the crowd on their side more often than not. And that all helps in the running stats. It's when you're losing and things are going against you that all of a sudden you start feeling a bit tired, or you start feeling a bit sorry for yourself. You can't make that run. But when you're winning and you're on top and you've got a lot of the ball, it's much easier to run. You see the fellas that run with some fellas, you put them doing runs and you just get them running normally, and then you give them a ball and all of a sudden they run a bit faster and they run for longer, and it's a good distraction from the running. But they're just a fantastic bunch of athletes, and I think a lot of teams are really high up on strength and conditioning, and of course with a team like Kerry that have so many really young guys. But you look at the Dublin young guys, you look at Conor Callaghan, like the shoulders, the arms on him. Kieran Kilkenny, they've added this high ball to their game now where they're just tanking it in on top of these guys, and the boys are able to win their own ball. But I really think anybody that's going to have a go off them has to defend them from the front. I think you have to take away that ball where they're popping it into Mannion and Conor Callaghan, and I think you have to make that ball harder and take your chances. And yes, you could get caught over the top a few times, but I just think if you're going to let them fellas run out in front of you, win ball and give it to runners coming off you, it's going to be a long day, because that's where they get their platform for. Everybody out the field runs in because they know Kilkenny and Mannion are going to win the ball. So it's easy to gamble, it's easy to be on the front foot, it's easy to be always positive when you know your guys are going to win it inside. Whereas if you were doing them runs and the opposition were cutting out a few of those, all of a sudden you start saying, geez, I'm not going to make that run now, or I might hold back now. But again, I go back to it, they're playing it on their own terms, and that's just another little added factor to why they're so dominant. You add that to the strength and the power and the speed and the ability that all these players have, and how tight and how nasty they are. I love it about them. Like, I love it. Johnny Cooper's running up, and he's got kind of Cox in a headlock with 10 minutes to go, and they're up 15 points. And I'm thinking, like, if that's where the mentality of a guy is that's 15 points up, playing for Dublin with 10 minutes to go, that makes it tough for everybody else that's trying to beat them. They're always setting down a marker. They're always showing the rest. I'd say every time they don't play against opposition. They're saying, we're playing against everybody. We'll show them all how good we are. We'll lay down another marker and just remind them that, you can't lay a glove on us, really.
No, it's true. Cormac Costello misses a few frees the last day. Come on in, Dean Rock. I mean, just to have that quality. Yeah. And come here, this plan of yours, say me and you do go into the gym for 3 years. Who comes out on top between me and you? Because I got age on my side now.
Well, asking the Kerry fellas, I was never a big man for the gym, Joe, so I'd probably back you.
I wouldn't, trust me. Listen, you have to run.
I'd back you in the swim.
Yeah, good. You have to run. So sum up Tyrone, Cork then from your perspective. Again, Cork really improved, and geez, they're a really good team with the ball in their hand. Like that Kerry's win against them looks better and better all the time. Ultimately, really good at recycling, and they, it's funny, Kieran Whelan picked out a piece where he said Dublin didn't come out and press them when they had the ball the last day, but Tyrone did try to do that. Colin Kavanagh came out a few times. Just Cork can pop a pass or beat a man and get in at you. Like, really good forwards, really moving in the right direction. Matty Donnelly and Tyrone kind of saved this around half-time onwards.
Yeah, Cork in the first half, Joe, looked really, really composed and made Tyrone look ordinary at times because they weren't running into the traps, they were minding the ball, they were getting their angles right. And they are a really good ball carrying side, and they've always been that. And for a lot of that game, the last day against Tyrone, they were pretty in control. They had a little blip after half time where you could tell they panicked a small bit, and that's why, like me, they'll learn a lot from that. Not to go through that 15-minute period where you concede 2 goals and 4 or 5 points, and all of a sudden go from 5 up to 3 or 4 down. They'll take a lot of learnings from that. But certainly against Dublin and Tyrone, they showed, and Kerry, they've showed that they've come on an awful lot, and they'll be very happy with their kind of Super 8. I know it's no good. I know they've come up short ultimately, but they really did push Dublin for a long time, and I think they'll be gutted after the last day, because at half time, they felt really much in control. They were really playing the game in their own terms. But as you rightly said, Matty Donnelly came in and said, hold on there, let's jump up my back for a few minutes, and I'm not letting us lose to Cork, and I'm going to make us, make this game in Healy Park in a few weeks interesting. Yeah.
Just a very last point, and keep it as short as you want, because I do know you have to go.
No bother.
Talking to Billy Joe Padden yesterday, and we were, kind of looking ahead to Tyrone, Dublin in Omagh. And he was firmly of the opinion that, he said this would be, even if I was a player in the Tyrone camp, and certainly now as a pundit, his argument was Tyrone are not going to beat Dublin twice in the space of a month or two. There's just too many things you need to go your way. There's an element of surprise. You need to surprise the Dubs with something on a given day. They need to be, a few percentage points off, maybe not complacency, but, just not coming back off a horrible defeat. And he was saying he would take, not throwing the game, but he said whatever psychological boost you might get from beating a team, and whatever psychological doubts you might put in their mind, the next time you play them, last 10 minutes, they'll know you've beaten them before. He says he doesn't put enough store in that. He says, absolutely, you're only going to beat them once. Don't make it be the one in Omagh, make it be later on. What's your take on all that?
I'd be opposite to that, and I argued with Canavan on this on Sky the other night.
Right.
I'm going for it in Healy Park. Am I showing everything in the locker? Maybe not everything, but I'm going to show an awful lot, and I want to try, and there has to be someone has to try and put a bit of doubt into Dublin's head. And even if Dublin lose the next day, they'll say, it didn't really matter, we knew we weren't that, and we're waiting for the next 2 games, and that's all fine.
Yeah.
But if someone puts it up to them in a semi-final or final, you know, they've got this kind of aura of invincibility because they keep pulling games out of the bag. They did it against Mayo in 17 and 18. They did it against us 15. They did it against us 16 in the semi-final. So they've always been able to pull games back. So I'd be really going, if I was Tyrone, with the team Tyrone have, you know, like there's so much video now, Joe. Like there's very little that you're going to throw the team, you know, that's going to maybe take them by complete surprise. There might be one or two things, but you know, Mickey's shown two styles of play all year: the style against Dublin and the style that in the Dublin in the league game, and the style he had to go to the last day against Cork, which was Matty Donnelly and McShane inside, which looks really good for Tyrone. When you put McCurry outside and Petey Hart getting on ball and dinking in ball to them, and everybody else is back in the blanket. And then you have the one where he lets Matty Donnelly out to get on ball and just plays McShane inside. So you know, that's the two ways they play. But no, Joe, I'd be riling up the Tyrone supporters. I'd be making it as hostile as I can. I'd be trying to use home pitch advantage. And we said all these things last year, and Dublin went up and won. But I think Tyrone are in a better place than they were last year. And you know, if the Healy Park and the Dubs will travel, and that's why they should have been out of Croke Park for that game last night or Saturday night. But you know, they'll travel to Healy Park. It'll be a great atmosphere. And if I was Mickey Hart, I mightn't be showing every one of my cards. I might keep one or two up, but I'd be certainly, my message to my team is, even without these things, I believe you can beat Dublin, and they have to be beaten soon. And now is a good time to put that into their mind that, you know, they're not invincible altogether. Yeah.
Final word to you then, Aaron. You know, if you're Tyrone, everything in your locker, throw everything at them, try and land some psychological blow, or accept reality and wait for the bigger day?
No, I would be of the same opinion of Kieran. I think you need to worry about yourself and your own confidence, and stop giving yourself an excuse to fall back on. I do think that if ultimately they're going to progress, you see a Cork team, albeit a really well improved Cork team, you've seen the trouble that they were causing Tyrone. I'd give Tyrone maybe a bit of leeway and say that they were flat because they'd played so many weeks in a row in the first half. But had Mickey Hart not made the three positional switches and or the three substitutions and the three positional switches at half-time, they wouldn't have won that game. Cork still stuck with them throughout the whole second half. For me, if they're going to have any possibility of getting back to another All-Ireland final, or have any chance of ever beating Dublin, it needs to be the way they were in the second half, which is a more offensive, more attack-minded, ball winners ahead of the ball. Only for Matty Donnelly, Peter Hart and joining McShane in the full forward line, which is the way they started the second half. I didn't even see them beating Cork the other day.
Right, okay.
Such was the difference in how they were playing in the two halves. So I don't think Mickey Hart would show that against them in Omagh, and why should he? He probably will go with his counter-attacking and more defensive style, but I definitely think that the way he set up in the second half would be something that he would be liking to see from the off in an All-Ireland final if they're lucky to get back there against Dublin.
Okay. Fellas, interesting stuff. Thanks very much. Kieran Donaghy, Aaron Kernan. Thanks, lads.
Take care.
Thanks, Joe.
Cheers. And the lads, we're looking ahead to this game. Obviously, Anthony Moyles was on OTBAM this morning, and he was talking about Dublin as well, as everybody has been, and he was making the point that they have made a tactical shift going forward. Have a listen.
Let's talk about Conor Callaghan. Yeah. Well, I think what they're doing is, and it's very, very evident over the last number of weeks and months, Dublin are playing a long ball now.
Yeah.
That is in the armoury. So they have decided, okay, and it's actually very obvious. Sometimes Scully did it, if you remember, McCaffrey did it the last day, where he's actually putting the ball up, and he's saying, listen, I'm kicking this in. And Scully did it yesterday. He bounced twice, he had a free, and he bounced it twice. So it wasn't as obvious as that, but he was basically saying, this is coming in on top of you. You better win this. So Kilkenny and himself, if you remember, Kilkenny played a lot of the league, I think, last year in at full forward.
Yeah.
So he has that ability now to hold off. And in the modern game, back when I was playing and I ended up getting shifted into full back, there was a lot of high balls coming in, so you had to deal with that. In the modern game, you don't get that. You didn't get it much in the last couple of years. Everything was kind of out in front of you. And when you're in a packed defence, it's all about tracking runners and keeping into your zones. There's very little actually high balls just put in, and you have to go win your own ball. But Dublin have been obviously focusing on that. And with O'Callaghan and Kilkenny, they have two massively strong individuals who have a leap on them. their conditioning, their athleticism is fantastic, and when they come down, their eyes are open, they're ready to flick passes or just turn you. Like O'Callaghan's turn yesterday, like he was down on the ground and he was around the defender as quick as a lightning and banged over the bar. Should have been a goal really a couple of times. But they've added that to their game, and it's a massive threat.
Yeah, certainly a consensus they're adding to their game. That was Anthony Moyles on OTBAM, brought to you by Avantcard, powered by MasterCard, 7:30 every morning on all our social channels.